Hi, friends. I want to tell you about my newest book, Whose Permission Are You Waiting For? An Educator's Guide to Doing What You Love. Whenever I find myself answering the same questions over and over again, it usually means it's time to write down those responses as a resource. And this new book is born from conversations with high achieving educators just like you. Just like you and me, we all run into hard decisions, career choices, navigating complex situations. Where do we turn to determine whether or not we're moving in the right direction? Whose Permission Are You Waiting For? An Educator's Guide to Doing What You Love is a 20-chapter book guiding you through the stories, insights, research, reflections, and applications for your way forward. Pick up your copy today for coaching on your leadership road ahead. You can find Whose Permission Are You Waiting For? An Educator's Guide to Doing What You Love at my website at williamdparker.com/books or wherever you purchase your books. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. This week, before we jump into a wonderful conversation between Jen Schwanke and Lana Penley, you're going to love this conversation. First, we want to bring you our question of the week. Our question of the week is supported by Summer Pops Math Workbooks. Principles: when students practice math over the summer, math scores go up. What is your summer math plan this year? A great way to start is by ordering free summer workbook samples at summerpopsworkbooks.com. Well, Jen, why don't you explain the context for this Q&A, because we're going to be listening to one of your students ask our question of the week this time.
Well, yeah, this was a fun little thing that Will and I decided to do. I taught a class of graduate students from the Ohio State University this semester. And I reached out to you, Will, and I said, hey, why don't you just drop in and, talk to my class a little bit about your experience as a leader. And I forget which one of us said we should record it. And so we did. And the students, just an incredible group of learners, of thinkers, of questioners, gives me a lot of faith in the future in educational leadership. But this question that was posed to you, Will, was from a student named Brittany Oliver. She's a third grade teacher, and she had a question for you about hiring for fit versus skill. And her specific question was about balancing hiring for specific skills versus that, the need for a cultural fit.
All right. Well, we'll listen into that Q&A, and then we'll listen into you interviewing Lana Penley.
Hi, my name is Brittany Oliver, and I am a third grade teacher. And my question is, when building a school team, how do you balance hiring for specific skills versus hiring for cultural fit?
I'm so glad you asked that, Brittany. It's nice to meet you. Well, I'm just going to be really blunt. And I'm sure I'm not alone, because I'm sure Ohio faces this too. But especially in the state where I live, in Oklahoma, it has become harder and harder to find either the skill or the cultural fit. And so in the past, when I first started my career, there may be an opening, in the number of candidates that you had lined up to try to take that position were so deep that you could be really picky, and you could just really scrutinize, and you could be laying up like three really high qualified people against each other and trying to pick that right fit. What I've discovered in the last several years is that because education is so difficult, and because this is Will, because states don't apply the amount of funding that I believe is important for what teachers deserve to be rewarded with, then that pool has gotten more shallow. But having said that, Brittany, when it comes to building a school team and balancing skill versus cultural fit, I will say this: competency to me is super important, but competency is often something that can be developed in someone. Character is usually something I'm not going to develop in someone. That's something they bring to the team. So I may be changing the answer to your question, but because for me, the cultural fit, what's most important to me for a cultural fit is the character and the integrity of the values of the person I'm looking at, because they may not necessarily, I want a school where people think differently. So if I'm looking for everybody being the same, stepping into my staff or my school, then what a sad place for kids to be. But I will say this too. I have worked in settings where the cultural norms are so, how do I say this politely? I have worked in settings where the cultural norms are so the same that it's sometimes hard to recruit people in that can help make the culture better too. And so some of those things as a leader you can control. I remember specifically going to job fairs in searching for new teachers and trying to recruit people in that would help change our culture and make it better too. But that's got to be a happy marriage for both people, because you've got to be a really brave person to step into a place where you're the new person coming in to affect change in a culture. And so it works in both ways. I wish I had the luxury to say that I always have a pool of people that I can make those distinctions between skill and cultural fit, but I don't always get that luxury. Sometimes you're just looking at who's the capable individuals that I'm looking at and how can I help shape them into what I want to be. But for me, the heart has to come down to character above all else, because the last thing I want is somebody that I can't trust and doesn't share the kinds of values that that we know are going to make life great for kids. So I don't know if I'm answering that question directly or not, Jen, but that's what I thought.
No, that's great. And I would say ideally in a perfect world, we want both fit and skill. We've talked a lot in this class about this, looming teacher shortage we have.
Mhm.
And, a lot of people don't want to be teachers now, and it's no surprise. I mean, not, as I said earlier in this class, the students don't know this, they're not necessarily treated all that well, and they're not necessarily paid all that well. And so, it's hard to find something that is both. And then we have to keep them. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Jen Schwanke, and I will be hosting a summer masterclass to be held on June 3rd at 11 a.m. that focuses on managing school conflict. If you are tired of school conflict throwing you off track, or if you wish you could turn those tense moments into opportunities for growth, you'll want to join our high-impact virtual session. It's designed for principals, aspiring leaders, and teacher leaders. So get ready to ditch the avoidance and embrace conflict head-on through a deep dive into understanding types of conflict, mastering the anticipate, analyze, act cycle, tackling common school conflicts, empowering others, and even confronting your own role in conflict. This session will be a dynamic, interactive experience providing practical tips you can use today. So transform your school culture and become a conflict resolution powerhouse. Register at williamdparker.com/guide. And I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Support for Principal Matters comes from DigiCoach and its walk-through tool. I want you to picture walking through classrooms, observing teachers and students. In just 10 minutes, you'd hope to see good instructional strategies and student learning taking place, or maybe you have questions about something missing from instruction or planning. Instead of taking 30 minutes to write a follow-up email or leaving your teacher feeling unsupported, wouldn't it be great to have an app on your phone or tablet where you could send immediate feedback while also collecting data? Enter DigiCoach, a customizable walkthrough and coaching tool created by school leaders for school leaders, with thousands of pre-written, research-based commendations and coaching tips empowering you to provide quick, actionable feedback. DigiCoach is not an evaluative tool. Instead, it is an easy-to-use feedback and coaching tool, an efficient way to store your notes and collect data for improving student outcomes right in your hands. It can be used on iPhone, Android, or tablets and includes speech-to-text functions. Make the most of your walkthroughs with a tool that saves you time and enhances meaningful feedback to your teachers. Go to digicoach.com to learn more, and please tell them Principal Matters recommended you check them out. That's digicoach.com.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
Principal Matters Podcast, episode 446.
Welcome, Principal Matters podcast listeners. I'm so excited about our guest today. We have with us Lana Penley, and let's start by letting Lana's voice be heard. Hi, Lana.
Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for having me today.
No problem. Let's tell our listeners who you are. So I'll start with the bio, and then we're going to dive into a really good conversation about principals, leadership, and SEL. And there's reasons for digging into that conversation that are going to be really fascinating and interesting. And there's some great resources that you have available. So, listeners, who is Lana Penley? She is a former principal turned CEO. And right now, she's standing right at the forefront of the social and emotional learning movement in education. So I'm going to refer to that as SEL going forward. And you had a school fire crisis, Lana, and that led you to spearhead a complete transformation of your school. You reduced suspensions, you improved academic performance, you fostered a thriving community for your students and your staff as well. And now you are the dynamic CEO and co-founder of Unlocking SEL. You're drawing on 25 years of experience that shaped your groundbreaking, mindful, and community-based approach to schooling, solidifying your status as a preeminent voice in SEL. You have an upcoming book. It's called Unlocking SEL, The 5 Keys to Transform Schools Through Social and Emotional Learning. And it offers step-by-step strategies for comprehensive school and classroom transformation. You've got 25 years of education. You're a renowned keynote speaker, avid pickleball player. That will get some pickleball listeners intrigued. You're a dog mom and the founder of groundbreaking courses like SEL Jumpstart, which is the mini course designed to help educators stop delaying and start doing with SEL. So listeners, all of that information will be available in the show notes, Lana's full bio, links to her courses, links to her books, and so on. So listen up for a great story. Lana, I'm going to toss the interview ball over to you and say, tell us about your current work. Start at the beginning and take us through your journey that led you to sitting here today.
All right. Well, thanks again, Jen, for having me. Thank you, leaders, for taking a moment to listen to the podcast in the middle of your busy time there. And yes, thanks for mentioning pickleball. It's my newest love. And get started if you haven't yet, if you haven't got going. I guess it's probably good to start. You had mentioned earlier about the fire and kind of what happened to my own kind of awakening, if you will, of a different way of schooling. I became a principal in 2008 in Portland, Oregon, actually. So way on the West Coast. And I remember walking into my first principal job, having done well in principal school and all of that. And I knew it was about good instruction and I needed to raise test scores of this underperforming school. That's what I was hired to do. And so I had that kind of energy. Come on, we're behind, let's go. And then my second year, unfortunately, I was a member of that club of principals none of us want to be in, where we had a school crisis during the school day. So literally our school burned down. Everyone escaped, but to say we were impacted is such an understatement. And as I'm talking to leaders, I can just tell you, as you could imagine, in a real crisis, that a whole idea of like lining up perfectly and just doing,
Right.
that's not at all what it really looks like. It was run for your lives, get out of the building, because it just happened so fast.
So what happened? Because I know principals want to know for their own knowledge. Like, did you hear a walkie call? Did you what was the situation and how did it play out?
Great question. So I was actually in the middle of a pre-conference with a teacher when the fire alarm went off. And, we set the fire alarms, the drills, of when we're going to do it. So I walked out to my secretary and I said, why are we having a drill right now? And she goes, it's not a drill. I didn't do it either. And by the time I walked around to the hallway, it was full of smoke.
Oh,
It was that fast. And you just take it, something just takes over. Like, I have to care for my community. I have to try to get these kiddos and staff out. And how do we do this? And so just to give a little more details, we went to our evacuation spots. Everybody's running out there. And then we realized we were missing some folks. So me and a few more teachers went back into the building and got the rest of everybody got out. Some people were climbing through windows. It was just super, super scary. And then once we got to the evacuation spot, because the fire was so big, we had to go to our secondary spot, which, by the way, I barely even knew where that was, to be honest.
right.
So it was the library down the street. So we had 500 folks running to the library down the street. And then by the time you get there, the press is there, the helicopters are there, all of that came. And then we had to do the reunification process.
Right.
So it was just, I'm even getting emotions even just talking about it with this detail. But I remember the moment when the teachers, we went through, we were K through 8, every grade level. And when we got to that 8th grade and we had every student and everybody had made it, just like bawling.
Right.
Like I couldn't believe it. Because if you look at the picture of the fires online, you will never imagine that everybody made it out.
Right. Wow. I'm just thinking, I was 17 years as a school administrator and I never had, thank the Lord, I never had that terror. I mean, even as you're talking, I'm imagining the fear that you didn't have one or many with you and, jumping out of wind. I just can't imagine. I can't imagine.
Yeah, our teachers were amazing in that moment. The kids, it's this whole thing when something happens, like if a little kid falls, they turn and look to their parent.
Right.
It was that thing. It was a crisis. The kids like look at their teachers and the
Right.
just met that moment unbelievably.
Right. Wow. So then, did they rebuild? Like what, talk to me, and I don't want to make the whole podcast about the fire because you have so many more important things to say, but then there's day 2 and day 3 and day 4. Like,
Yeah.
How did that play out?
Well, they came, so my supervisor, along with the superintendent, and a lot of people from Portland Public came to the library. We started talking, everybody's safe. And immediately it was, okay, we got to get these kids back in school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I believe in today's time, it would be different. There would be a
Mhm.
little more care and concern about, oh my gosh, so just went through a near-death experience.
Right.
That time, it was not that. But
Right.
I knew enough to say, I want us to stay together.
Mm-hmm.
Because the original idea was kindergarten would go here, first grade would go here, second grade would go
Right.
here. And I said, I really want, if possible, for us to stay together. And so they had an abandoned school 5 miles away.
Wow.
And the fire happened, I believe it was on a Tuesday. And by that next Monday, we had that school up and going.
Wow. Oh, how wonderful. How wonderful that you advocated to stay together too, because there's just something about a school community that cannot be replicated or changed mid-year.
Yeah, like we weren't our building. We were the
Mhm.
community. And so taking that community was really important. But it was a little bit of a disaster, as you could imagine. No routines,
Right.
a new place. A lot of our kids were dealing with poverty, so they didn't even have car access. To get the 5 miles through a major city is a long way.
Right.
Different community. And we had a lot of people pitching in. Actually, all of Portland Public Schools, they just did a lot of help. They gave me another principal to help me settle with, okay, well, how do we establish routines and all of this in this new location? But just if I could pause here to any other principals, if you're part of that community of crisis, lots of love to you because it is just something to go through. And to go slow with recovery. We moved
Right.
way too fast and
Mm-hmm.
we should have done a lot more around the mental health around what happened.
Right. That's a really good point. And let's pause too. As you were telling the story, I thought as a principal, oh goodness, principals know your secondary location, develop a reunification plan, know that it's not going to look like you practiced and be ready for that knowing. There's a lot to be learned from this.
Yes, yes. And carry a cell phone. I did not have a cell phone with me. So I had to borrow someone off the street's phone to call to let the district.
Wow.
And one more lesson learned, if I could, you don't have to give these media interviews.
Yes.
So I said no to those. I even had a neighbor that was a reporter that was trying to interview me at home. I'm like, no. And I see these people on the Today Show have a crisis and the very next day they're talking.
Right.
I'm thinking, just give yourself a beat.
Right.
So that was some things that we did really well, some mistakes we made that people can learn from moving forward.
So maybe your interview that you didn't do on the news became a book. Tell us about your book, Unlocking SEL.
Maybe it did. Good pivot there.
Yeah, there you go.
New book. I'm so happy it's out. It has been a dream So as we started pivoting to, okay, how do we do this differently? I did not want to be the same kind of principal. I started doing my own therapy work. I started studying mindfulness. I started studying how you change schools, like really at the heart kind of change schools, and just made this decision that I didn't want to be that kind of principal anymore. I wanted to be more of my authentic self. And if that meant I couldn't be a principal, maybe not. But I had to do it a different way with kindness and connection and authenticity, all the things that had kind of been stripped from me. And I didn't like who I was becoming. So as I started thinking about, let's redo this, there's this thing of social and emotional learning. I tried to find a book to teach us how to do it. I couldn't find anything. There were bits and pieces, and specifically of student SEL, but there wasn't anything that says, here is a guide of how to implement SEL in your school that can really lead to transformation. So I thought maybe I could write it. You know, I had imposter syndrome and all of that, but I thought, why not? So the book lived in me for many, many years until really when I moved on from being a principal to being a full-time consultant. And I had a little more time to kind of birth this baby, but it was painful, but it's out in the world now.
Right. Right. And you know, this question is going to sound very bizarre for someone who led through a school community's recovery after fire. So bear with me. But
Okay.
there are people out there who say, hey, wait, slow your roll. SEL is not the responsibility of schools. It's the responsibility of parents. So dig into that a little bit for communities who haven't experienced a fire like this or a similar crisis. Perhaps by explaining for us, what is SEL in your eyes and why is it needed in our schools?
Yeah, I think that is really a great question. So when you think about what is the definition of social and emotional learning, it's this idea of helping students, that's how it was framed originally, develop the skills, the life skills they need to manage their emotions, build positive relationships, make good decisions. But it's so much more than that. It's also about how to support the adult, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. And it's really about how to be a good human and to create a healthy community. So if you think about that way, if we're talking about how to be a good human, how to bring more kindness to the world, and we all know we can use more kindness in the world right now, you can just see that it is critical that schools are these healthy and thriving places. I understand, however, why some people may think, though, this is not the responsibility of the schools. We have so much on our plates right now. And I wonder if I might have even felt that way a little bit before the fire. But I will say, after the pandemic, after everything that's going on with our divisive environment, can't we say that just about every school has been through their own version of a fire now? Like every school has been significantly impacted. And so as schools being this like uniquely positioned place for the significant portion of time they have with children, and really we have to teach students how to be in the world with themselves and with each other and with teachers. So
Right.
it's about putting this energy in the front end so we can decrease some of the issues and dysregulation and stress and all of that on schools in the back end.
Well, and I would also add, I think when people ask that question, they assume SEL lives in one place and that's it, exclusively in one place. I think it's both. I think parents still teach SEL. Parents still, yes, they still talk about should still talk about a response to a problem, regulation of emotions, respect for others, acknowledgement that the world is a difficult place and there's mean people in it, that kind of thing, right? And ideally, it's a collaboration. It's the same conversation, really, that we should be having about literacy or about behavior. It should be parent doing it, school doing it, saying the same thing so that kids are hearing it everywhere they go.
Absolutely. That's such a great way of putting it. And if you think, let's just boil it down to, it's about being kind to ourselves and others. Don't we want schools that are those kinds of places?
Right.
That help
Right.
the newcomers they come in, that drop a piece of trash and pick it up, that
Right.
they're sorry, that don't have big meltdowns, but able to do some deep breathing to calm their bodies.
Right.
All of those things. And I also think, Jen, one of the things is I didn't have this in school. I don't know if you did. I didn't
No.
have anything like this.
No.
And yet, could you imagine if we would have?
Right.
I mean, I didn't learn the power of my breath until I was in my 40s.
Right.
To calm my body.
Right.
And now we
And
have 5-year-olds.
right. And I want to get to that, the question of mindfulness. I just asked a friend of mine who's a counselor a couple of days ago, what do you mean by mindfulness? But we're going to pause on that because I want to talk a couple more questions about the book. Talk to our listeners about your intention in formatting the book and how you structured it to help readers implement your strategies.
Well, first of all, I wanted it to be an entertaining book, engaging book. I mean, I have read, as I'm sure you have, so many education books that literally will put me to sleep, as if
Right.
we need some entertainment, as if we're not real people, that need some real entertainment. So that was really important to me. I was like, I want people to actually enjoy reading this, from engaging stories to there's some funny things in there. I mean, I think I'm a kind of a funny person, so I want to put some good funny things in there, and school is funny. But I wanted it to be like a blueprint, so really could start from the beginning all the way to really total school transformation. And so what I tried to do is, how can I break this down into manageable steps, which I call keys, and I really focus on 5 of them. So starting with the foundations. So what is SEL? Why is it important? What are the benefits? What are some misconceptions? So first, understanding the foundation. Just like if we were playing pickleball, we have to know the rules, what it means and how to do it. And then we go to, wait for it, adult SEL as the second key, not students. So how do we get the adults in a sense where they feel cared for, a sense of belonging, trust, able to manage their stress, including principals? We're talking about that too. Then we move to student SEL. Okay, what are some practical classroom strategies? So not just theory, we've got theory and research and all of that, but what are some practical strategies that people can use, like deep breathing, like a peace corner, like a soft start? And then we go, okay, now how do we scale that school-wide and create this cycle of success? So really concentric circles that build on each other, that within a year or 2, your school could look very different than how it does now.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Principals know a strong school starts with a strong team, making sure teachers feel heard, supported, and valued. But in a busy school year, it's easy to miss how your staff is really doing. That's why I'm excited about Alpaca, a new way for school leaders to listen to their teachers and support them well. It all starts with one simple question: how are you doing? And how easy is that? Alpaca's quick pulse surveys give teachers a way to share honest feedback, no long forms or 1 to 5 scales, just meaningful insights that help you know where to celebrate and where to focus. And celebration, Alpaca makes it easy. Each month, Alpaca delivers a teacher celebration kit with care packages, recognition ideas, and fun activities. It's effortless for principals and ensures teachers feel heard and celebrated. With Alpaca, your teachers will feel heard and you will feel like a stronger leader. Make a real difference in your school's culture at alpacapacks.com/Principal Matters and get 15% off just for Principal Matters listeners. That's alpacapacks.com/Principal Matters. Why is IXL used in 95 of the top 100 U.S. school districts? Because it works. Research across 45 states showed that IXL schools outperform other schools on state tests. With IXL, you get a personalized online learning and teaching solution that helps you improve achievement, empower teachers, track progress, and more. This one platform for K-12 helps teachers accomplish what normally would require dozens of other tools. For example, as students practice skills, IXL automatically adapts to ensure each learner is always supported and challenged at the right level. IXL also provides every student with a personalized learning plan to help them close knowledge gaps effectively. One of my favorite things about IXL is their personalized test prep tool. For exams like the SAT and ACT, IXL will analyze a student's most recent score and generate a custom list of skills to help them boost their scores. If you want to take the load off of your teachers so they can do their best work, IXL can help. Learn more at ixl.com/PM today.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the adult SEL portion. You have devoted an entire section to support adult SEL. And I'm thinking about teachers. Many teachers are struggling right now. And I think, the younger generation of people who are deciding what they're going to do with their lives are thinking, well, I don't want to be a teacher. They don't seem well. So
That
that's
is
contributing to a
very
teacher
true.
shortage, right? Right. So how does the concept, the strategy of adult SEL directly support teachers?
Well, first I will say I did not come to that wisdom at the beginning. I
Okay.
just, like most people, student SEL, forgetting that our staff had also gone through a fire and also lost all their stuff and
Mhm.
also experienced moving to a new place and losing their license and all of that stuff. So if I could just tell a quick story of how
Yeah.
when this hit me, we were teaching gratitude to students. That was the topic. So we were all teaching this lesson. I go by and I watch this lesson on gratitude. It was so flat. It was so boring. It was like,
Mhm.
speak about what gratitude means to you. I was like, such a yawner. Like, why is this topic so like, we might as well have been teaching sentence grammar. I mean, it was not alive. And as I was walking to my office, I thought, I wonder if they'd ever thought about gratitude in their own life. And then I thought, have I? Have I ever? I mean, I
Mhm.
say I'm a grateful person, but have I really thought about gratitude? So I bring my team together. I said, we're going to do something. We're going to move our next staff meeting and we're going to talk about gratitude. We're going to define it. We're going to share examples. We're going to ask people to talk about when gratitude has shown up in their life, both given to others and extended to them, how that feels in their body, what are they noticing, and why it's important in schools. And then we're going to go back and reteach the lesson. Right? So we just did the lesson with the staff, and then we said, okay, now we want you to go back and teach that lesson. And I can't tell you how it popped off the page.
Mhm.
As they're saying gratitude, they're saying, and you're not going to believe what this person did for me. And they share this story like it matters and like they care.
Right.
And I thought, we've got to do this like co-path thing here.
Right.
We
Right.
can't just do this with students because our adults don't speak this language.
Right. Well, and gratitude is there's many parts of SEL, and my next question is going to be about mindfulness, but gratitude, it sounds so cliche. I'm so sorry, listeners, but thinking about gratitude can be transformative. And I'm not just saying you put up the sign at the corner of your desk that says be grateful. I'm talking about really digging into what that means, as you said, define it and apply it and revisit it over and over and over. And so that does tie to mindfulness. And like I said, I asked a friend of mine whose profession is working with people in crisis. And she said something about mindfulness. And I said, can you define that for me? Because I hear that term a lot. And like many terms in education, it has potentially been overused and its definition has become watered down a little bit. So tell us what mindfulness means to you in the context of your own transformation and how it played a role in you creating this book and this framework and implementing SEL.
I think of mindfulness as the way that we brought social emotional learning to life. Now, I will pause here and say, if you envision a stereotypical mindful person, maybe they're speaking in a whisper, they got this earthy scent of patchouli, they're seated
Right.
in a lotus position, all of that. It is not me. I was a girl hailing from humble backdrop of Appalachia. It did not seem like something that was even accessible to me.
Mm-hmm.
The people I saw on TV who are practicing mindfulness, what they look like, the language they used, no one I knew was doing that growing up. And so when I started finding out about mindfulness and realizing there's something here then started doing my own breath work around it, it really came alive to me, this idea. It's about being aware, simply awareness.
Mhm.
That's how I think of it. You
Mhm.
could say awareness with kindness. So right now, even though I'm sure you and I both have a million other things to do, I want to be right here in this moment, not worried
Right.
about the past or worried about what I'm going to eat for dinner tonight. I just want to be right here.
Right.
And that presence changes everything. It really does. Like, I hope, like, you can feel like I'm right here in this moment. And then I can move on to my next moment, in my next moment. And so that awareness allows me to be more aware of how I'm feeling in my body, more aware of my connection with you, more aware
Right.
of maybe if I'm feeling a certain kind of emotion, I need to practice the pause, I need to express some gratitude. I just live with a bit more intention. And as I started doing this in my own work, slowing down, we had staff very interested in it. We started doing book studies. We went to mindfulness conferences. We started meditating as a school 2 times a day. All of this just brought a sense of humanity to our school that absolutely was not there before. And I owe a lot of that to mindfulness.
Right. My therapist friend said, when I asked her to define mindfulness, she said, it's knowing where your mind and your body are. And that's kind of exactly what you just said. It's that awareness. And to be able to teach that to adults and students under the context of SEL kind of closes the circle in my eyes. So tell me, what does an ideal social emotional learning program look like in, say, an elementary school? And there's going to be a two-part question. The next
Okay.
question is going to be about how it affects academic performance. But first, tell our listeners, what does it look like?
So it started with just a simple student SEL curriculum, and I'm sure many of our schools are doing some sort of SEL curriculum. We use Mind Up, but there's a lot of different ones out there. And also did PBIS and Toolbox, a lot of different ones. But that is just one component. And I call that's explicit SEL instruction. And you definitely need explicit SEL instruction. However, what I help people with is it's so much more than that, because we're trying to create the conditions where people can thrive. So we want it to be embedded into the daily routines. So it's not just this separate lesson once a week, but really woven into the fabric of the school day. So for us, for example, we started at the beginning of the day with what we called soft start. And that's basically a homeroom place of community building, rather than you're behind on your work, get started. That was my energy from the beginning. Chop, chop, let's go.
Right.
More like, I'm glad you're here. Welcome.
Right.
We had soft lighting. We had soft music playing, teachers at the door, greeting. Now, which one of those places would you rather come to? You know, like get started or welcome. We said it's like
Right.
people coming into your house to a party.
Right.
Welcome. We're glad you're here. So we did that for about 15 minutes, that soft start, non-academic focused. It could be journal writing or reading a book or talking with a partner. Doesn't mean there weren't routines. It wasn't kids running around the room crazy. It was a calming moment, getting ready to learn. Then after about 15 minutes, that's when we did our brain break, our mindful breathing. All right, every day. And then after mindful breathing, our brains are open. We're in our prefrontal cortex. Then we go to direct instruction or changing classrooms, whatever we wanted to do, but nothing happened for that first 15 or 20 minutes of the day. So that was daily. And then the explicit SEL instruction was once a week, whole school, same time, same day, same lesson. We did a SEL block. Took us 2 years to get there, but that was a huge change. And then incorporates adult SEL. So that's like this really third important component, that we have a parallel pathway where we're also working with teachers around stress reduction, around connection, around sense of belonging and inclusion, and really just making a place of work a happy, healthy place. So those are kind of the three big components. It is really embedded in everything, explicit instruction, and incorporating adult SEL.
So make a tie to performance, achievement, academics. How did it affect your academic performance?
Well,
Not
to be honest,
yours,
I
but
was very
your
worried
students.
about this. You know how we're all held to these standards, right?
Right.
I was very worried about that. And when I got sign off from my boss that we're going to take those first 20 minutes of the day, he said, well, your scores better not slip. I'm like, oh, okay. Good morning to you too, right?
No pressure. You should have said you need a little bit of soft lighting, my friend.
Yeah, you do. You do. You do. However, good news is our scores went up and we became the highest performing Title I school in math and reading. So there's some beautiful irony that happened.
Mhm.
When students learn skills like managing their emotions, making good decisions, understanding themselves better, connecting with each other, they're able to focus and participate and be more engaged. We just know that to be true. And
Right.
SEL helps all of that happen. Plus, you've got teachers that are happier, so they're showing up differently.
Mm-hmm.
Principals are showing up differently. It just creates the conditions for a more successful learning environment. It's
Well,
simple as that.
yeah, and I actually understand your boss's question, and I understand the caution of, oh, test scores better not go down or academic performance better not go down, because there there is so much temptation to carve out instructional time for other things. I remember years ago I worked with a teacher who had a chess program in his class, and I was really worried about it because I'm like, it appears you're playing games, and he's like, no, I tie it to math instruction. And so his scores did not go down. It ended up being fine, but I had that same panic too. And I think it's excellent. It shows true leadership to be able to say, let's try it and let's see. And
Yeah.
that's what you did.
Yes, yes. Let me just share a quick little example. This student I have, I'll give him the name Jose, that I was working with, who, you remember those students who the emotions got the best of them all the time?
Oh,
But
yeah.
you couldn't even tell how smart they were because they couldn't really even do much work. But once we started doing SEL and once we taught him about his breathing, how to manage his frustrations, how to take these deep breaths, how to ask for help, they made a huge difference. And he was able to stay much more calm during tough moments, which
Mhm.
then allowed him to focus on his schoolwork. His
Right.
grades improve, he become more engaged. And if you would have saw him, I would have seen him, pardon me, from the very beginning, you would have never thought it would even be possible for him
Right.
to access learning. So
Right.
until we got to the dysregulation, it didn't matter what the
Right.
curriculum was until
Right.
we helped him feel a deeper sense of calm in his body.
Right. You know, there was a student once years ago, he was a third grader, and I'm telling you, this boy was a handful. Every teacher he'd had was done with him. And I got to admit, I had no idea what to do. They would just send him to me. And one day I'm finally like, you know what? We're going to go out and run. And I started bringing my running shoes to school, and we would go out. It was horrible. I hated it. I looked like a dork. I'm walking, I'm running around the playground with this kid. It was transformative. His mother still, when I see her at football games or whatever, she gives me a huge hug because he needed to connect to his body. He was in an environment where he wasn't breathing fresh, clean air. He wasn't outside moving. His feet not on the ground. It was something like that can make a huge difference.
Yes, yes. And that's mindful movement is what you were doing,
Right.
and bonding with him
That's exactly
and
right.
showing him that he mattered.
Right.
He cared.
Exactly. So I'm going to bring up another word. And
Okay.
I know we're running out of time. I don't want to wear our listeners out, but equity. Tell me how equity plays a crucial role in SEL implementation.
Well, our school was a very, very diverse school. We had 100% free and reduced lunch. I think we had 19, 20 different languages. So I did have a lot of experience in working with the schools with a lot of different equity needs from, race, culture, language, sexual orientation, socioeconomic. But until we created belonging and an inclusive environment, it was really hard to get into much of the deeper equity work until
Mhm.
we helped student and staff feel valued, connected, understood. Like creating that kind of community was so important for our equity work.
Mhm.
And I'm really proud to say, from both working with our students and working with our staff, we had a flat suspension rate. So we had no disproportionate discipline at our school, which went from this to this.
Right.
I say some of that was the work we did around compassion, around equity and inclusion, it was also around self-management. We also looked at our own implicit biases and privilege and all of that. But we were all just becoming a bit more self-aware, a bit more culturally responsive, and more empathetic, frankly. And through all of that, we were really able to address the diverse needs of our students and staff.
Excellent. Okay. So, quick question. You have to answer this in like 60 seconds or less. I'm a teacher. I'm listening to Principal Matters podcast. I'm reading your book. I want to do some of this. My administrator, my principal, my district, my parents, whatever, they're not supportive. What do I do?
Well, I feel you. I work with some schools around the country, and I literally have gone in to do training and had the principal sitting in the back with their arms folded like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, dude, you hired me.
Right.
What are you doing? So as a principal, I'm able to go up to them at a break and say, look, if this is going to work, I'm going to need you to be on board. So undo
Right.
your arms and lean into this work, and trust me that we're going to bring some change.
Mm-hmm.
We can be a difficult group, and with a lot of wonderful admin, but we've also got some of us that are very stuck in our ways and don't really lean into the SEL work, where we have teachers that are ready to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my recommendation. Start small and show results.
Mm-hmm.
Start in your classroom, implement some of these SEL practices in your classroom, and that mini course you referenced at the front,
Right.
I teach you exactly how to do those brain breaks in your classroom. So you can start there, get that going. People will begin to notice the changes in your classroom and share these positive outcomes as they occur. Your principal will begin to notice, then build your little coalition, get your like-minded colleagues who support SEL. Then you get your grade level, say, hey, what if fourth grade, what if we do this next year? And then tell your principal to call me, and I'll get
Right.
help them see the difference.
And you'll come in and say, no crossed arms. Let's go.
Yeah. Get out of your big suit and let's go.
Okay, so I'm still that same teacher. I want to know more about you, Lana. Where do I go? What do I do?
So you can go to the website, unlockingsel.com. But if you are a principal, there are really two big ways that I work with schools. I do a 2-hour workshop called Burnout to Balance, just focused on adult SEL. And I have worked with schools around the country, surveys in the mid to high 90s. People really love it. And it's just teaching adults about stress, how it impacts their body, and we give them some mindfulness strategies to deal with that. And then the second is I take schools through an entire year-long session where I work schools through the book from 5 keys from the beginning all the way to the end, where I come in and work with your school in 5 different sessions. So I would recommend go to bookcallwithlana.com and let's jump on a call and talk about your issues and see if I can help you in any way.
Excellent.
Bookcallwithlana.com.
Okay. Thank you so much. And listeners, that will be in the show notes. I'll have all those links for you in there. So, Lana, thank you so much for your time. We should admit our flaws to our listeners. So I will say this is our second attempt, because the first one, my Zoom needed updated, and that was a whole thing. So Lana, thank you for your patience in getting this session recorded. And again, go to the show notes for connections to Lana. Lana, thank you so much for your time. This is going to be really powerful for our listeners.
Thank you, Jen, and thanks for the work that you've done in leadership and the books you've written and all of that. And I've really enjoyed connecting with you and look forward to getting to know you better.
Excellent.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Principal Matters.